Welcome all. Thank you for joining this edition of AFSC's Join the Conversation, where we have an opportunity to hear from some of the stories that are happening around the work at AFSC. Today, we're going to hear from Alicia and Jaja, and they will share some of the work we're doing around the effort to free them all. Free Them All was an effort that AFSC launched as we were all responding to the pandemic and looking out for ourselves and our family. Staff and colleagues and the community challenged us and said, we can protect ourselves, but what about the people that are enduring this pandemic in jails, prisons, and detention centers? And AFSC stepped into that challenge. And we decided that the only way to really respond is to call for freedom. And we are calling to free everyone, right? Not just during the pandemic, but especially during this pandemic, as we realize these specific dangers that people endure while incarcerated during this time. But we also believe that this is a long-standing call because we know that there are better ways to respond to the challenges in our society than to lock people up. So today we're going to hear from Jaja. Jaja is out of our New Jersey office, and we'll hear from Alicia out of our Illinois office, where they will share some of the successes of the effort to free them all and some of the ongoing work. And I think most importantly, invite you all to join us in this effort to look out for not just ourselves, but for everyone. So with that, I invite Jaja to begin with some of the work that has been happening in New Jersey and some of the impacts that we've had.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here and representing our team in New Jersey. My name is Chia-Chia Wang. I am the Organizing and Advocacy Director for AFSC Immigrant Rights Program based in Newark, New Jersey. I have been with AFSC for many years, about 16. Um, Time flies. I want to speak both overall, the work that we do, pushing back harsh immigration enforcement, as well as our anti-detention work, and also with, just highlight some of the very important releases or successes that we have seen in the last couple of months, up to a year. Because I think that, this is now the end of the year, and also as part of Freedom All, we it's been a challenging year, and that we should take a moment to celebrate the work that we do, the human lives that we were able to support, and their migration journey as well. Um, so the New Jersey Immigrant Rights Program, is AFSC's largest domestic program, and our anti-detention and anti-immigration enforcement work. It's is I guess the most crucial or important part of our overall programming. We have many attorneys who represent immigrant detainees, people who are detained for immigration purposes, and that we also have organizing staff who engage in leadership development of those who are impacted by immigration detention deportation policies, and as well as to coordinate state and federal um, campaigns that would change the terrible system that we have today. That includes the most recent success is the anti-detention law that would ban all future immigration detention agreements in New Jersey, and as well as any renewal or expansion of current immigration detention agreements. Um, so that means that an end to immigration detentions is in sight. In 2 years, we will not see any immigration detention in New Jersey. Um, that's huge. That's historical. They are not on the national level. We don't anticipate the U.S. ending immigration detention entirely in the next few months. So, which means that if there are New Jersey people, who are arrested for immigration violations or purposes, then where would they go? So we're trying to get more information and also put pressure on Immigration Custom Enforcement Agency to provide us with more information so we can represent people, we can provide supports to those who would be detained somewhere else. And we often engage or create individual release campaigns to pressure Immigration Custom Enforcement to release New Jersey detainees, whether detained in New Jersey or somewhere else. Because Immigration Custom Enforcement Agency has a lot of discretion to release people and allow people to fight their immigration case at home and not in detention. I think that the last year and a half or almost 2 years now, COVID gave us a lot of challenges but also some opportunities, for people to see how, detained or incarcerated lives are very vulnerable to, this kind of, public health or pandemic that we saw in the last 2 years. And that, there was a New Jersey something called the Public Health Emergency Law about at the beginning of the COVID pandemic last year that allow people to, and I'm talking about the overall prison population, to end their sentence a little earlier and come home. Because of that new law, a total of roughly 3,000 people were able to return and not have to be in prison in jails. But we also learned that out of that 3,000, 85 immigrants who are not citizens did not come home. So they were turned into Immigration Custom Enforcement custody, and that was over a year ago. So we suspect that some of them have been deported. So those are the challenges. And then we're really talking about people who have lived in New Jersey for a very long time and who may have, green card, which is the permanent residency before, and who have families and children in New Jersey. That, once deported, they will not be able to come back for a very long time. Because that's the federal law that barred them from returning, for 10 years or indefinitely. So I think that it's really important for us to, for AFSC and for our communities to know and to be able to talk about this as much as possible. The human impact, the broken, prison to detention and deportation pipeline that not everybody knows. So, just back to the work that we do in New Jersey, we do have legal services, we have organizing efforts. We also lift those voices that often don't, have the opportunity to speak, and that it is our job to create the opportunities, and that provide any resources that we have and to facilitate that process. Our overall vision is for people to be able to migrate, to live in a safe place, and to be with their families. So all the anti-detention, anti-enforcement work really falls into that, bigger vision that everybody should have the right to protection, to have a right to family lives, and have a life to have the right to better opportunities. So that's really quickly and just our overall work. I want to end my part, and I will turn it over to Alicia with two really important and successful stories that we were able to advocate in the last couple of months. So one is an immigrant detainee who actually served 30 years in state prison, and who pretty much, half of his life, and that, was subsequently turned over to Immigration Custom Enforcement Detention Facility in New Jersey. and that we started realizing that he lost a sense of time, and that he has a lot of medical needs, um, and that he was flown to a facility in the south, facing imminent deportation. Now, so it was so for us, our both our staff attorneys and organizing staff and myself, you know, believe that everybody deserves a second chance, and including and especially this person who have been spending so much time in incarceration, and that it is important for him to be able to see that there is at a little light at the end of the tunnel, and be able to enjoy the rest of his life free. So he was released at the end, and that thanks to numerous phone calls that our community members were able to make, and on his behalf, and our work with elected officials who also pressure immigration custom enforcement to release this client, and then our attorney who really not just serve as provide legal services, but also really the only I think meaningful support that the client was able to get, because the client didn't have a lot of family members here in the US. So, and also, you lose contact, right? After 30 years not being in the community or with your family, you may lose that tie to the community. And another man that we were able to, you know, support for a few years, a man who was detained in immigration detention facility in New Jersey for almost 5 years. So every day he counted days, how many days it has been, 3,564 days, or so and that and he was not there to serve any sentence. He was there because the law subject him, or and doesn't put a limit to immigration detention. People can be detained for immigration purposes in the detention facility for indefinitely. So, so he didn't know when he will be released and whether he will be released at all. And then at the end, he was released, and we were all thrilled. And that our staff took him to celebrate his birthday. Basically, it's a rebirth of a person. And then he went to Michigan to reunite with his brother. So we were just really thrilled about these releases, and that we hope that we can learn and shed more light on these really amazing individuals' journeys. So I just want to end my portion with these two stories, and I'll turn it over to Alicia.
For sure. Thank you for that. And I'm Alicia. I'm a fellow working with the Chicago office in Illinois. My second week working, but have been doing this work for quite a minute. And I do want to acknowledge there's been a lot of definitely a lot of wins across the country, but also a lot of we won't be completely satisfied till it's free them all. And just want to speak a little bit about Illinois. So the Illinois Detention Center, juvenile detention center, spends over 100 million each year on just incarcerating youth, but still doesn't provide services in, just putting like mental health services, putting these kids through college centers. I could go on and on about services that we could spend $100 million on. And I'm a part of Final Five campaign as well. So Final Five campaign is basically, we're essentially trying to support shutting down the rest of the Illinois prison system, youth prison system. We're trying to get the governor to end them all, and put in the money where it needs to be in different resources. In part of that act, last night with Final Five, American Friends Service Community in Chicago, Freedom School, Freedom Chicago School. We actually went to JTDC, so Temporary Detention Center, and we actually went to go see the youth. There's big windows over the patio where they could be looking down at us. We had really big Freedom Mall signs, really light, big, bright Freedom Mall signs, and basically just play music. Show them our, send them hearts. Speaking, we had speakers from American Friends Service Committee, from Freedom School, Chicago Freedom School, and also Final Five campaign. And we also had a poem from a youth that's been inside. And we, said those poems. We had an online aspect as well. And something that stuck out to me is just hearing the banging on the windows from the youth. They noticed that we were there and they were begging, trying to communicate. So that's something that really moved me about last night. Last year was my first year attending a rally or anything of protest or anything of that nature, and this year I led it with Final Five campaign, also being a part of American Friends Service Committee. Um, and like I said, what I mean, like it's been so many wins, like just the stories that we just heard. But definitely, and Illinois trying to be more and trying to get action calls and getting the governor to put money into resources that make sense. And in that, another action call we did last night was just showing up and showing out. The youth needs to be home for their holidays. Christmas is next week, and I have 4 kids of my own, and I just can't imagine not being with my own kids for the holidays. So that's a part of the reason why we did that last night, and almost brought kids to my ears, like I said, just hearing the banging and them sending us hearts and stuff like that. Um, and there's some photos in the comments as you guys can see just about the recap last night. Join the Final Five campaign, sign our petition. And yeah, that's all I had. And it's my second week, like I said, but I'm pleased to be with this wonderful organization.
Great. So we're also live on Facebook. If anyone has any question, feel free to pop them in the chat.
Thank you. I think I see a question. From Debbie. So why is ending youth incarceration an important step towards freedom all? I think the bigger category from I could answer from freedom all is a part of our youth. You not only youth, adults, even just the stories that we just heard before, and immigrant detention centers, like it's important, right? So like you know, just for the youth prisons or youth detention centers, it's not rehabilitating these youth, and the norm or the race or the facts or whatever you want to say is since they're not being like they don't have programs, they don't have just it's just been harm in these programs. They're getting out and being it and committing again and then being incarcerated as adults. You know what I mean? So why not put put money into centers that may help them and repair harm. And youth is just important as adults. You know what I mean? And the bigger population. These youth, it's just unfair, like them to be incarcerated as as adults, they're kids, they should be out. It's so many things that may have failed them while they're in this predicament right now. And why not, try to address that? So I think it's important just as adults and free everybody, free, our babies, our adults, and immigrants, anybody, they're humans just like everyone else. So that's how I answer that. How do you say? Okay, so I could probably start off this. So from Jennifer, how do you start conversations with young people about the incarceration? No problem, Debbie. Yeah, so that's a heavy question. I was asked this question yesterday. As I said before, I have 4 kids of my own, and I say like black and brown community. I have 3 sons, and when I was out there last night, I was just thinking about them. It's just so many things that could go wrong in an instance, just being a person of color. Um, and like I said, we did a lot of focus groups. I say we did a lot of focus groups with Final Five going into the youth prisons, actually speaking to them and conversation, just talking to them like, what could have prevented you from being in here? What do you need when you get out? What do you want to do? And most of these kids were just saying, I want to be a kid. I want to be. I want to have a place I could play. I can have a place. I want to go to college, but I don't have the funds. I want to be able to eat. And I think starting the conversation first about what could have prevented you from being in here, being real honest. And that's something that I would want for my own kids. Just me being an impacted person myself, being real honest and about the conversation. And like I said, just starting off how we did it was just basically just talking to them, asking them what did you need for you not to be in here? What would you imagine instead of prisons or jail systems? Like I think one person even said like, I would like a lion at the zoo. I've never been to the zoo, but just me, as I grew up into this, so I'm not even safe to be in the zoo in Chicago. You know what I mean? So that's how we started conversation. Being real honest and bringing out steps to prevent them from being in there and what do they want to see instead of prisons. Thank you, Jennifer, for that question.
Thank you for that answers. I learned too. So yeah. So the next question is from Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Are other states studying the model of New Jersey and how it ended detention? So yes, and New Jersey is not the only state as of now to pass anti-detention law. New Jersey is actually the fifth state. Um, I believe that California also passed a similar law, but it was something about a loophole within the legislation that actually triggered a very long detention contract to be signed before the law was enacted. We kind of had a similar situation here in New Jersey when the state legislature passed the legislation and went to the governor's desk for signature, and he did not sign for 2 months, and he actually went on vacation, and we were like stalking him, and in during those 2 months time, the only remaining or non-county detention facility that's run by Core Civic actually renew their contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement for 2 years. So after that, we made more noises, and I think it's a lesson that the governor probably learned. And right after that, he signed the legislation into law. So, and in the last couple of months, we have participated in some national conversations and to share our experience, and then so that other states can learn the lessons as well as the good and the bad lessons from New Jersey. So yes, we hope that there will be more legislation passed in other states. Um, that is just to say that I think national coordination will be very important. And the next question is from Willie. Hi, Willie. While immigration detention in New Jersey is ending, what can be done to help immigrants picked up by ICE and sent to detention center somewhere else? So that's a great question. we should, and we are asking ICE, local ICE office to provide us with a list of people that they picked up. Right now, we have not received any response, and we have been, asking for um, maybe 6 months now. So we will continue to ask, because then, our universal representation program then, can benefit and can follow, can track those individuals down. So to make sure that they have, due process, and they have, access to go to affordable counsel or free counsel. And then so they're more likely to succeed in their immigration case. Yeah, and then another thing is that our advocacy for individual release campaign will continue, and that um, you know every case is different, just like every single person in incarceration has their stories and to tell. So usually our release campaigns are tailored based on the person's, really history in the state, and then as well as why the person needs to stay in New Jersey and how communities can support. Oftentimes the targets are also different, depending on where the person is detained. So the another reason why we need to tailor our immigration release campaign based on individual needs. I think that's it.
I just want to say thank you all. Definitely, join us in the fight, in the action. We have it up on the comments and the petition and all of that. Yes, I just want to say thank you for joining us today and free them
Yeah.
all.
Free them all. Thank you all for watching and having submitting those questions. Have a good day.
You too. Have a good day.